I've been reading some stuff by Kinesthetic this morning. Kinesthetic is a neurobiologist who works at one of the London universities. And he's got a blog called something like Professor Zeki's Musings. I'll put a link in the information box. But he's great actually. I've read quite a bit of his stuff. He writes really well on art and creativity and the neuroscience of art and that kind of stuff, aesthetics. And this particular bit was actually a follow-up he did on some work he did on a book of his a couple of years back, and it's about what he calls synthetic concepts. Well, this particular article in this blog I was reading today was synthetic concepts and ideals. I don't know if I'll ever get to that, but the idea of the synthetic concept is a really interesting one, because he's I guess because he's working in brain science, leaning towards psychology and experience. He has that kind of orientation. So when he's talking about concepts, he's not talking about them as kind of Cartesian, realist ideas, things out there in the world preceding human experience. Nor is he talking to them about them in terms of something like Platonic ideal forms, which kind of exist in some kind of weird transcendent realm, neither in nature nor in human experience, but in some other world. He's talking about them very much, talking about concepts, ideas, very much as a feature of human experience and human cognition and the human brain specifically, appropriately enough since he's a neurobiologist. But the idea of the synthetic concept is a really simple one, but it's very powerful, I think. I mean, basically the idea is that we build up concepts, ideas of things, ideas about things, by having repeated experiences with those things. So I look out, I see a tree, there's a tree, I'm looking at it now, and then I see another tree, and then I see another tree, and I see another tree. And I spend my whole life experiencing trees, and whilst I'm doing this, what's happening, according to Zeki at least, is that I'm layering additional information on this abstract concept. So what was in the first instance an individual experience of a tree, the first time I saw it, and also what is every time I have an individual experience of a tree, all that is part of, in thinking terms, is part of a synthesized, a collection, a coagulation of all those individual experiences into a single concept of a tree, a synthetic concept, as he says. So every time we come to a new experience, we bring with it all of the synthesized experiences of that thing that we've had in the past. So every time we come to a new tree and see a new tree, we bring with it all that baggage, and most of which is just informing our recognition of it. You know what I mean? We recognize it as a tree immediately because we have this concept acting as like a template in our heads to compare it to, but also potentially conceptual baggage to do with evaluation, or could do with experience, or could do with use function, or could do with all kinds of things. Okay, I think part of that, although I'm not absolutely sure, is also about different orientations to the same object. So when I walk around this tree, it's on the opposite side of the canal here, as I walk around it and look at it again, nothing I'm seeing there is the same as it was a minute ago, nothing obvious. All the branches are at different angles, the intersection points between the branches are at different places. I can see different surfaces and that I couldn't see before, and some of the surfaces I could see before now disappeared. But I don't have this feeling of, oh, it's a new tree. I know it's the same tree. And the reason why I know it's the same tree is because the synthetic concept I'm building up on a moment-to-moment basis contains that kind of detail, but it's completely compiled. Okay. Now that doesn't, in Zeki and in similar kinds of ideas, that doesn't apply just to visual ideas. It applies to all kinds of perceptual concepts, so sounds and tastes and all the rest of the kind of stuff is exactly the same. It also applies to movements, kinesthetic movements, and elsewhere this has got different names. There's an idea of the fuzzy trace, which is a pattern of motion usually that's abstracted through repeated experiences, and elsewhere I've heard it referred to as the kinesthetic image schema, which again is a pattern that's synthesized out of all of the different experiences of patterns. So, for example, if you're driving a car, every time you turn a corner is slightly different to the last time you turned the corner. You're doing slightly different things with your hands. You're looking in slightly different directions. You're having to put the car into a different gear, possibly. You're doing different things with the accelerators and brakes and so on. But it's all very similar. And so each experience you have of turning a corner in the car is a kinesthetic image, not a visual image. It's an image of motion. And that lays down through repeated experiences to form a synthetic concept, the synthetic concept of turning a corner in that particular case, or the fuzzy trace, or the kinesthetic image schema. It's all the same stuff. But Zeki goes on to talk about how synthetic concepts also refer to abstract things, not just to visual experiences and sensory experiences and somatosensory motion, but also to abstract ideas like justice or truth or love or hate or any of those kinds of things that you experience this emotion, or you experience this this interaction, this relationship like justice, and each time you experience it adds to the synthesis of your understanding, which again it gets richer and richer because each one is slightly different to the rest, so it slightly richens each time, even though they're superficially similar. The differences and the entailments and the inferences of each one is slightly different, so that you eventually build up this quite complex but nevertheless singular synthetic concept, synthetic scheme, which tells you that you're in a situation of justice, or that you're under the influence of love or something like that. I think I'll leave it there.